Thank all of y'all for coming out here tonight on a Tuesday night to hear about our program and the special guests that we have here. Representing the City of Shreveport Police, we have Captain Larry Cunningham. City Attorney William Bradford has not shown up yet, but he was supposed to be here. Sheriff Steve Prater, Ross Owens from the District Attorney's Office, FBI Agent Ryan Allen, and his supervisor Chris Cantrell, and last, U.S. Department of Justice Allison Bushnell. All right. We also have a message from IRS Special Agent of the Criminal Investigation Unit, Jimmy Sandifer. Jimmy has said that he has some cases that they're in the middle of investigating, so he asked if I would apologize for him not being able to come, but he asked me to share this message with you. If you have any factual proof of issues where government officials or elected officials have committed a crime where money is involved, please call his office. And the number is 318-780-5812. Jimmy Sandifer said also that he would love to come to our association and address this organization at a later time about any of the issues involving the IRS Special Agent Office. And there's Mr. William Bradford as we speak. You can come up, Mr. Bradford. Okay, normally we have old business and new business, but because of the topic that we're going to do today, we're going to move right into our program. If anyone would like to see any reports, treasury reports or anything, you may do so at the desk at the end of the meeting. Sandra Foster, our treasurer, keeps the books down to a nickel or better. So she's done a great job and we love her to death. So if anybody wants any information like that, please see her. The purpose of this meeting is that in the last year or so, we've heard a lot of allegations about corruption in our city involving government officials. The B&A has watched this from a distance, and I've been asked over and over and over, who is responsible for investigating and who is responsible for prosecuting government officials that have done corrupt things. So it hit me that this would be a wonderful program for the Broadmoor Neighborhood Association. I have not spoken with any of these individuals about what they do and what they're going to say, other than to invite them to this forum and give them a topic. And the topic that everyone here is going to discuss is, what is each individual level of government's jurisdiction in investigating and prosecuting corruption involving our government officials? And how do you work together to make sure that the bad guys go to jail? You know, I mean, all of us want to know. And so we gave them that topic. We told each one of them they would have 10 minutes to explain their jurisdictional responsibilities and how they work together. And then at the end of that, each one's presentation, at the end of all of them, we have a mic set up right out here where anybody that wants to ask a question may step to the mic and ask a question. We will not entertain questions from your seat. Go up to the mic. Please state your name before you ask your question. Keep your questions, please, to 1 minute. This is not a political forum where you stand up and give a political dialogue. It's where you get the opportunity to ask these gentlemen a question. And by doing so, we will maintain an orderly decorum. As you know, those of you who have been here in the past, we want things to be pleasant because this is a church and we are their guest. So if you have a question to ask, keep it respectful and you will get a respectful answer. These people are here, they serve us, they work for us. They've come here voluntarily, and I applaud them for being here myself, okay? And at the end, I think you probably will too. So without further ado, the first person up is Captain Larry Cunningham. We have mics at the table if you would prefer to stand up and speak at that spot, or you may come up here to the podium. Thank you.
I guess this thing is working. This is one of the worst things I do, filling in for my chief of police. And I do give you his apologies. He had a prior commitment and he's not able to be here. The Shreveport Police Department and the chief of police of the police department has oversight of any crimes that are reported within the jurisdictions of the city of Shreveport. We do work with the other agencies. We work with the sheriff's department. The chief and the sheriff several years ago combined the white collar unit. They will handle things that come up of that nature. Any of the crimes that are reported, the chief has that purview. Once they are investigated, they will go to the appropriate jurisdiction, whether it be to the district court or to the federal court to be prosecuted. And that in a nutshell is about what I can tell you with the police department and how we address what comes to us. If it comes to us, each and every one are investigated and they are forwarded on for review by a district attorney or by a U.S. attorney.
Thank you. Mr. Bradford, thank you for coming.
Good evening, everyone. It's the lawyer in me. I will use a podium. I'm a little more comfortable here. As Mr. Broussard may have said, I am the city attorney for the city of Shreveport. That means that I am the chief legal officer for the city of Shreveport and its jurisdiction. I'm responsible our city is organized under a home rule charter, and in that charter it provides that there is a chief legal officer who is responsible for advising the mayor, city council, all departments, all boards and commissions. One of my other responsibilities is also the chief prosecution of any municipal ordinances and violations within the city of Shreveport. My jurisdiction extends to the city courts. I am a special assistant district attorney. I do not prosecute over a state court on Texas Street that many of you may have seen before, but my office is also located at 1244 Texas Avenue near the police station. One of the things that you should be aware of in my office is I'm the only office, meaning that our department is the only department that jointly works for both the mayor's office, the administration, as well as the city council. We are appointed by the mayor and we are confirmed by the city council. Our jurisdiction extends only to the corporate limits of the city of Shreveport. Anything that comes up in the city of Shreveport, whether it be contracts, whether it be legal implications that the city is involved in, lawsuits and litigation, claims, any administrative processes also come through our office. So we have a very broad touch with the city of Shreveport, but we have a very small office that services a lot of needs. The mayor relies heavily on our office for direction on legal matters, as well as the city council. One of the reasons I'm a little tardy today is we did have city council meeting. And after those city council meetings, I do a debrief and make sure that all of my city council members, as well as the mayor, are aware of any upcoming legal issues. So not only do we have the administrative side of our office, we also have, as I said earlier, the prosecuting side of our office. We handle violations such as speeding. We have traffic court dockets. We also do criminal dockets, which may include but not limited to domestic abuse battery, theft, shoplifting, vandalism, misdemeanor crimes. We do not prosecute felonies. We do prosecute first, second, and third offense DWIs. Anything past that goes over to the district attorney's office for handling as a felony. We do have currently 9 full-time or part-time assistant city attorneys that work with my office, as well as a cadre of law firms that service our litigation needs. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have at the end of this presentation, and I hope that this presentation is helpful to you in understanding the actual various services that we provide to each of you as citizens on a daily basis. I appreciate your trust and consideration, and anything that our office can do to help you, please feel free to reach out to us. Our number is 673-5200. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sheriff Steve Prater.
Good evening. The Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office has done a lot in the way of investigating public corruption. In 2009, when we realized that there was a real problem and we weren't sure where it was going or what we were doing in some particular cases, I pulled 2 of my best investigators from the detective office and they formed the first corruption unit. Since that point, they've made multiple arrests. They have investigated many things. They continue to investigate many things. We work with all of the other agencies that you see here. In addition to, I don't believe they're represented, is the Attorney General's office, is the Legislative Auditor, is the Ethics Board, is the Inspector General, all with the state of Louisiana. They investigate things, and Louisiana State Police, they investigate public corruption cases also, along with the federal agencies that you see here. There's no one particular group that is tasked with that. That's why I went ahead and got this group together, and we started actively advertising and investigating all public corruption cases. Quite often the public, you all, the taxpayers, and me myself get very frustrated with the fact that bad government doesn't mean it's illegal. We investigate bad government when we see it, but it doesn't mean it meets the statutes that will be prosecuted. So we have that problem. Things like awarding contracts to your friends, I know that's bad, but that doesn't fit corruption. It should be, but it doesn't fit corruption, but it's frustrating. And if you think it's frustrating to you, you ought to have sworn to do what I do for the last 42 years. It gets extremely frustrating to me. So I feel any frustrations that you have, I feel them twofold. And so we try to do everything we possibly can to investigate. We're not the only ones. Many times an investigation is begun by, say, the legislative auditor of the state of Louisiana. The legislative auditor, by Louisiana law, conducts the investigation and then turns it over to the district attorney of the parish. It doesn't turn it over to the sheriff, it turns it over to the district attorney. In other words, there's a tripod here. You got the investigators, you got the prosecutors, and you got the judges. And it takes all of us working together. We work together very well on a number of fronts. We collide on a number of fronts. We all have big egos. I mean, we'll all admit that to each other. But that doesn't mean we're wrong. It doesn't mean either one of us is wrong. It just means we're frustrated and we're trying to do the right thing. So when you hear of public corruption, I invite you to call the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office. I promise you it'll be investigated. And I promise you we'll do all we can to decide if it's just bad government or if it's corruption in government. And if it's corruption in government, we will investigate it thoroughly and pass it on to either the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Caddo Parish District Attorney's Office, and they will make the decision if it goes forward or not, if it's enough there to prove. That's not our job. We investigate. They present the case. And that's the way our government is set up. Thank you.
From the District Attorney's Office, Ross Owen.
First, I want to express the regrets of the District Attorney, Mr. Stewart. He's attending the United States Fifth Circuit Annual Association and meeting. He's sent his first assistant, and she called me, and she had forgotten that her daughter had a play tonight. And so I'm here in her stead. My name is Ross Owen. I'm a special prosecutor. I work directly for Judge Stewart, handling cases that he assigns to me. I'm a former federal prosecutor and a former state prosecutor. I was previously a state prosecutor under Paul Carmouche. I've handled these types of cases, both in state court and federal court, and have seen all of the agencies you see here today work together. As the sheriff said, the DA's office is in charge with investigating. Once the crime or package is reported to our office, somebody's assigned to respond to it, evaluate it, and depending on the complexity, involve somebody. Just because a public official commits a crime, allegedly doesn't make it public corruption. You know, sometimes it's an employee who's got a gambling problem and has stolen some money, and it's a pretty straightforward theft charge. That would be one example. But our job is to evaluate the case and decide whether we can develop enough evidence, or enough evidence has been developed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt before the law that a crime has occurred. And if we have that level, then we bring it to court and a conviction is obtained, or sought at least. I've had occasion to work with many of these agencies, and our office works well with them all, and they all work well together. The first prong is your immediate response to a law enforcement violation. So for example, if you're in the parish and outside the city limits, then you might have a local town police or the Caddo Sheriff's Office to report the crime to. But regardless of which, you have a really good organization in all of these that do a great job every day. And just like school teachers, they're all underpaid and underappreciated. They could work 24/7 and still not get the job done. So I don't want to do anything but say that you should be thankful for the people that you have working for you. They all do a really, really good job. Doesn't matter whether you're a school teacher or a clerk at a Circle K, there are some bad apples. But by and large, we're very, very blessed to live in this community. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Ryan Allen. He is an FBI agent, and following him will be Mr. Cantrell if he chooses to make any comments. Ryan?
Actually, I'm going to precede Ryan here, but my name is Chris Cantrell. I'm supervisor of the FBI office here in Shreveport. Many folks don't know that we have an office here, but we have. It's been well established. I originally started working in this area in 2007, moving from Pittsburgh to this great state and this community. We work a variety of crimes. We fall under the New Orleans Division. We cover 8 parishes, so we have a lot of area to deal with and create liaisons and work with. But we have a variety of crimes. Obviously, everybody understands our first threat is to prevent a terrorist attack against this great nation. Whether it's a terrorist entity, espionage, or cyber-related infrastructure attack. But you will be amazed to know that our 4th priority within the FBI is combating public corruption. For us in Shreveport, again, a myriad of crimes. I have a handful of agents that we assess, and they kind of become subject matter experts within those crimes. I think one thing that we do really well, as you've heard from those who preceded me, is we work as a task force. A lot of the crimes we work on with white collar on the various entities here, to include some of the other communities and parishes. Some things we work solely just within the FBI. But I think information sharing and our partnership is what makes us successful in this community. We're here to talk about public corruption, and we can talk about anything. I've got a variety of background. Mine is on cyber and crimes against children, and you don't want to get me started on that because you'll be here for a long time. But I would like to introduce Ryan Allen. He's my subject matter expert in public corruption, and he's going to give you a one over the world of how we deal with public corruption and some of the challenges, and then we'll be followed by Department of Justice, our attorneys.
Can you hear me? All right, so my name is Ron Allen. I'm a special agent here in the Shreveport office, and what I investigate is white-collar crime and public corruption specifically. So Chris covered it a minute ago. We do a lot of things in Shreveport: white-collar crimes, public corruption, drug trafficking, civil rights, healthcare fraud, just to name a few. But when it comes to public corruption specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit about our federal public corruption investigations, how a case is initiated in our office, some of the statutes that we commonly use in prosecuting these cases, and I'm going to touch on some public perception and some challenges that are unique to public corruption cases. So primarily, we like to focus on United States senators, Congress, state legislators, parish commissioners, city council, and any lobbyists that may come in contact with those legislators. And sometimes we'll also look at governors and mayors and their high-level staff. Some of the typical acts that we see as far as public corruption, those public officials may do, they may introduce bills that for some reason promotes something that they'll gain personally from. That may vote, no vote, that type of thing. And some of the payments that we see public officials receive are cash, campaign contributions, property, and sometimes they'll be hired as consultants for some companies, and they'll get money that way. So how do we initiate cases here in the Shreveport office? Just to name a few, Sometimes we'll have sources provide information to us. So they'll bring some information in and we'll initiate a case that way. A lot of times it's through concerned citizens just like yourselves. Just if you know something, if you hear something, don't assume we know it. You have to take the initiative to come forward and tell law enforcement. And sometimes we get referrals from the United States Attorney's Office. They'll come across some information. Sometimes citizens go directly to them. And a lot of times they'll refer them to the FBI. So some common statutes that we'll use federally to prosecute a public corruption case could be mail fraud, wire fraud, robbery, gratuities, the Hobbs Act, false claims, theft of government property. So I'm going to touch on just a few of the more common ones out of that list. So bribes, that's pretty clear what that is, right? Sometimes people will donate to their campaigns. That can be pretty tough to prove. So we have the task of proving that a campaign contribution is in fact a bribe. So we have to prove that campaign contribution resulted in that public official doing an explicit act. So you can imagine the difficulty in that if the person who made the campaign donation got what they wanted and the public official got his money. So they can be extremely difficult to prove sometimes. So the Hobbs Act. The Hobbs Act is something where maybe you would extort someone. So you would make that public official vote yes for whatever you want to because of fear. So if you go in there, sometimes you can intimidate a public official, make them vote whichever way you want them to vote. And that's something we could prosecute under the Hobbs Act, extortion. So sometimes our investigations run pretty long. I know sometimes word may get out that there's an investigation. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. I'll say this, typically here in Shreveport, what I see in a typical public corruption investigation can go from anywhere from 2 years to 5 years. So don't expect it to be a quick in and out type of deal because these cases are very difficult to prove. Like I think the sheriff referenced a minute ago, they're not easy. They're difficult. These guys know what they're doing, and it can be difficult to get in the door. So some challenges that we come across. Another difficult issue is these people are public servants, and they've dedicated their life to being public servants. And a lot of them have pretty stellar reputations. So they can bring up a dozen character witnesses at a trial. So we have to make sure that our case is very tight because it can be a difficult matter when you're up against something like that. And something else, while we're investigating the case, you have to keep in mind these are allegations. These are allegations, right? Nothing is proven yet. So if we were to go out and go public that we're investigating a public official, and it turns out after 5 years of investigation that, you know what, these allegations that were made in the beginning were not true, then when that person goes up for election, it could negatively affect them. So we have to take those kind of things into account. And another thing the sheriff said that I'd like to touch on again, because we come across this more often than not. A lot of times a public official will end up being unethical, immoral, and just a downright bad person. But it does not mean he has met the elements of a federal crime. And a lot of times there's more than, say there's 3 or 4 elements to a statute that we have to meet before we can prosecute that person for that crime. And if we don't meet every single statute, every single element in that statute, we can't prosecute that person for that crime. So sometimes they're not nice people and sometimes they're unethical, and it's disappointing sometimes that we can't make the case we want to make, but we have to go where the evidence takes us. And that is generally how we do it here in Shreveport.
Our last speaker is Ms. Bushnell with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Can y'all hear me? Okay. No, there's a lot of feedback going on. My name is Allison Bushnell. My title is Assistant United States Attorney, and I'm in the Shreveport office. My boss is the United States Attorney for the Western District of Louisiana, and ultimately my big boss is the Attorney General of the United States. So we are part of the Department of Justice, but we have an office here. Our district is actually a very large geographical district. We are all of Louisiana except for Baton Rouge and the surrounding parishes, and New Orleans and their surrounding parishes. So the Western District is 42 of Louisiana's 64 parishes. So our office covers a very large territory. As you've seen, we've gone from within our city limits now to a very large portion of our state that we cover. We have 2 manned offices, one here in Shreveport and one in Lafayette, which is where our U.S. Attorney primarily sits. She comes up here also. But we have 5 courthouses that we cover. So we have staffed courthouses, which means we have a sitting judge in also Monroe, Alexandria, and Lake Charles. So our office covers court in all of those places. And you've heard tonight from the FBI here in Shreveport, but we work with agencies in all of those different locations as well. Let's see. Ms. Finley, my boss, is a presidential appointee. The rest of us that work in the office are not. And the U.S. Attorney is appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate, and will switch over as presidents so choose to do so. But the U.S. Attorney is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer in our district. And she's charged with prosecution of cases, but also we represent parties in civil cases as well. So whenever the United States is a defendant in a case or a plaintiff in a civil case, our office has an entire civil division that deals with that as well. Let's see. Some of the important things, and I just want to go through all this because, specific to public corruption, as you know, this can come up in very different ways in a lot of different places. Some of the things that we deal with in our district is we have 2 military installations. As you know, Barksdale Air Force Base right here in Bossier, and also Fort Polk Army Base in Leesville and Vernon Parish. So we deal with crimes and offenses that come out of those locations as well. We also have 2 federal penitentiary complexes. So there's a federal prison complex in Pollock, Louisiana, which is outside of Alexandria. There we have a maximum security prison, a medium security, and also a prison camp, which is a minimum security. And there's another one in Oakdale, which has a medium security as well as a prison camp. This obviously opens up a lot of different areas for corruption, and the focus here has been on elected officials, but there's a lot of corruption that goes on with government employees as well. And that is very important in our offices to consider that as well. We prosecute postal employees, we prosecute correctional officers at the prisons, and these may seem like smaller crimes when you look at it. A postal employee who steals $100 out of somebody's mail. But I guarantee you, if that's ever happened to you, that it's important to you. And our mail system is very important. Even though electronic age, it seems to be becoming less important, it's still very important, and the security of our mail is very important. And our prison system, it's the same. Correctional officers are very important, and we need good ethical correctional officers. What we see a lot of is bribery of correctional officers to bring in things such as cell phones. And you might think, well, is that really that big of a deal? But if you get a bunch of hardened criminals in a maximum security prison with cell phones, which enables them to communicate from across prison units, it can become a very dangerous situation, and you end up with assaults and murders and other security concerns. As Ryan kind of went through some of the statutes, and we work with a lot of different agencies. We do not investigate, we prosecute. However, we do work with the agencies as they're going through investigations, and a lot of times. Sometimes it's just consulting. Agent Allen may call me and say, hey, I'm working on this case and this is what we have. Should we try to do this, or do you think we should try to go this way instead? And we may just talk about it. In the end, the agencies will make the decision of what they do. They don't work for me, and I can't tell them what to do. But we try to work together so that at the end of the day, we have the best case that we can that we can bring forward. Something that's a little bit different in the federal system, if you're not entirely used to it, all felonies have to be indicted. That means they go to the grand jury. So any case that is going to be brought, felony charge, has to go through the grand jury procedure. And bill of information may be filed on misdemeanor cases, or a bill of information can be agreed upon by an individual if they have come forward and are willing to plead guilty before the grand jury has heard the case. But other than that, it's going to go before the grand jury. The grand jury is going to decide whether or not there are charges there. And another thing that's a little bit interesting in federal cases, once you get to trial, there has to be a unanimous verdict of guilt. So you've heard a lot of talk about these cases are difficult to prove, and a lot of times they are. We also have to consider that we have to have 12 people sitting in a jury, and every one of those people have to vote guilty in order for us to prove our case and get that verdict. So when we start a case and we're looking at the investigation and we're about to present it to grand jury, we want to make sure that this is a really good case. As Agent Allen talked about, especially when you're talking about public officials and elected officials, you don't want to be making false allegations. You want to make sure that the case is good, the case is there, the evidence supports what the crime is. There are many different crimes that can be brought. A lot of times you will see just a simple theft. You might see a wire fraud or a mail fraud, which is a public official has done something they shouldn't be doing, and they used the mail to do it, or they sent a fax, or they transferred money from Shreveport to Dallas on the computer. There's all different type of things that can happen. Or we may have a case, we had a case, not in this parish, in another parish, where a sheriff was prosecuted for drug charges. So it just depends on the facts of the case and what's going on. And whenever we have an allegation that's followed up on, we want to look at the facts and then see what statute's actually been violated. Our office doesn't have its own public corruption unit, we're a little bit smaller of an office. However, I can tell you that our office takes public corruption cases very seriously. Since I've been in office for about 10 years now, whenever there's been a serious public corruption case, it's always a senior attorney who's assigned to that case. So our office definitely puts a priority on that and wants to make sure we have experienced people working those cases. Open for any other questions? If you have complaints, sometimes people call our office with complaints, and we almost always have to refer them to the FBI. It's not that we don't want to take your complaint, we just don't have a venue, or we don't have an avenue to do with it. So we usually just turn around and call the FBI and tell them. So if you call our office, you'll probably hear you should call the FBI. So there's other agencies you can call as well. Obviously the Sheriff's Department, state police. Sometimes it might be like if it's a Department of Justice employee, such as a correctional officer, you might want to call the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General. So there are different places you can call, but our office can help you get to the right agency, but we can't officially take your complaints. Thank you.
Before we open the floor up for questions, I want to say a few words about what I heard just then and make a couple of points. First point is all these folks that are up here, they all live in our community. They all have a vested interest in trying to ensure that our elected officials follow the rules and follow the laws not only of our local jurisdiction, but state as well as federal. And also, there's a little thing called the Constitution that they have to constantly refer to when they look at allegations of corruptions by officials. And all of us know and should adhere to the constitutional belief that a person is innocent until found guilty. So allegations are one thing, but a person is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And it's something that I've learned in my life. Also, the final thing is that every one of these people are sworn to uphold the Constitution as elected as officers, investigative and prosecutorial. So I have a lot of faith in them, and I know they work very, very hard to represent us. They work for us, and I would hope that anybody that's heard what they've said tonight will utilize their phone numbers to contact one of these ladies or gentlemen, because I know they will respond to you. Now, at this time, we want to open up the floor for questions. If you have a question, please come to the mic, state your name, and address your question to one of the panelists that we have here.
Correct. To whom should we...
Hang on, Ken. Is that mic hot? Test it, Ken. Test.
Testing, okay. If we're working at a computer and we're blocked out, I know, and Marissa last month explained, you called Microsoft or whoever, but to whom, which is the appropriate agency after we get rid of the problem to report such a problem? Let's say it happens in the city of Shreveport. To whom should we report that type of issue?
Repeat the issue, Ken.
We're working at a computer, we get blocked, and it's a scam, and it says, do not touch your keyboard or your mouse and call a toll-free number, you know, and it's totally a scam, the kind of thing Marissa talked about and you were aware of. So who handles that? If any of them?
That would be identity fraud cases or theft by computer. Yes, sir.
I'm sure the sheriff can speak to this because we share a task force, but although this is different from public corruption, any cyber-based crime, you're talking about maybe a denial of service or just a phishing or whaling situation where you lost identity theft. We can assess that and work with that. We use a couple mechanisms in which we do. We have a cyber task force, but again, everybody here, again, we work with them. So whatever venue you feel comfortable with, if it's something that goes to Caddo and they think there's a national nexus, they'll call us. Or if there's something that we get and we may not be able to take federally, we will call the sheriff's folks and share that information. But I think the biggest thing when it comes to cyber crime is to report it. That way we can put the word out and protect other citizens and hopefully identify a subject.
Yes, sir.
I'm Chester T. Catfish Kelly.
And he's also on the board of directors of the Broadmoor Neighborhood Association, and he works very hard at that job. So thank you, Chester.
Thank you, Ron. I am so old that I remember the day when the press was very instrumental in investigations and investigating reporting, which is virtually non-existent now except for social media. It is with that point that I commend Marion Marks, who's here tonight with the blog Forward Now, Elliot Stonecipher, who is ever present, John Settle. Let's see, the fourth one is our own Will Broyles, who I think is sitting right here with realshreveport.com. Now, I hope that from time to time, these people really get under your skin, but at the same time, I think they're doing a wonderful service for the community. The specific question that I have, other than lamenting the lack of the press as being a part of the big picture, is for those of you who are prosecuting, can you give us a little bit of insight into the role of your point of authority politically to control your decision making? Because I see it on the city level. In other words, I don't know how much control the mayor has on allowing you to pursue one thing or another, or in this case, members of the parish commission, or in the federal level, either, for example, the president. I mean, we even see those things being debated now at the national level on the question of a presidential candidate herself. But I would like to see if y'all could briefly just comment on how the political pressures influence the way you decide who to prosecute or not.
That's a very, very good question, especially on my position. I deal closely with essentially 8 elected officials on a daily basis, being your city council and your mayor's office. And one of my responsibilities is to you, the citizens, first. And so despite the fact that I'm appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council, my obligation is to each and every one of you here. And so although I do not have the capacity to prosecute public corruption, those are matters that will go to the state level or to the federal level, I do have the obligation to investigate. If the sheriff's department or the police department comes to me as a city attorney, I have an obligation to help and assist in that investigation, whether it be gathering documents, whether it be locating witnesses or assisting them with locating individuals who can testify. So my obligation as a city attorney rests in that aspect. And one of the things that you have to keep in mind as well is that we have 2,200 employees at the city of Shreveport, and so do we expect all of them to be held to the highest regard? Yes. And we do have an obligation to you as a citizen to make sure that those individuals who are servicing your needs or representing your interests are also doing so in accordance with all the laws, whether it be ordinances of the city of Shreveport, whether it be state statutes or federal regulations that govern each and every one of them and their obligations to you.
In terms of political pressure, I don't think we have that. What we would have is what Ms. Bushnell described, in that you want to make very, very certain that the case you have is a good one, that you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt somebody has done what the allegations are. My boss has told me, do the right thing and I have your back. And the benefit I get is that I have either a law enforcement officer from the Shreveport Police Department or from the Sheriff's Department who's already busted their tail and put together a case. And then we sit down and try to be a team. And most of the time we come up with a collective decision on what to do. Occasionally the police want the prosecutor to go forward and the prosecutor thinks that they don't have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And then it's a decision that is up to the district attorney himself. The ultimate threshold is, can we prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime is committed? And we go forward in those cases, regardless of what it is.
I guess I'm going to echo what's already been said in some ways, in that political pressure is not supposed to be part of what our job is. Our job is to fairly and objectively look at the facts that have been brought to us. If there's a case, we're supposed to help with the investigation if we're needed, to issue subpoenas, to help with court orders, and that's regardless of the political pressures. Now, we also have a mechanism for recusal if our office feels that there's some kind of conflict between our office and the target, if there's some kind of connection there, that whether it's a too close of a connection, or even if it would just look like it was too close of a connection. We have a mechanism. We can contact DC and say, hey, FBI is working this case. Our office has this connection to this case, so we don't think we should be part of it, and they will assign an entire different district to work on that case, which is very nice and removes that pressure from our office and gives the citizens another level of security and feeling that it's being handled properly. That's how it's supposed to work, and I think that is how it works. The other thing I'll say is jurisdictionally, and I don't know where he went, and the man that asked the question, you know, mentioned the president. Obviously, you know, we have to have a crime in our district in order to prosecute it. So I have had people call me before while I was on duty and complain about something that happened somewhere else, and you know, that's not something that we can handle in our district. We only can prosecute crimes that occur within our district. There's a few, you know, kind of different statutes that pull from other places, but for the most part, the crime has to at least take place in our district, in the Western District of Louisiana. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind. Something may have happened, but we may not have jurisdiction over it.
One thing that I did want to add also from the city side is, although we do not prosecute public corruption, one of the things that does happen, I think Mr. Bushnell hit it on the head earlier, is we deal with a lot of the employees of the city. And so when the police department brings forth some allegations that may be wasteful or fraud within the city of Shreveport, one of the tools that we have, although I may not prosecute them, is, of course, their job is on the line. And so, you know, this is a very small community and everybody wants to go to bat for their friends, but my job is to also temper those relationships with the letter of the law. And so if a employee is found to either be stealing from the city or to have committed a crime, one of my jobs is to help and assist in that investigation, and not only on the criminal side, but on the administrative side. And so there are repercussions to their actions on the administrative side. So if an individual is terminated, for instance, then my job as the city attorney is to also, when I use the term prosecute, I mean prosecute on an administrative level to ensure that the action and discipline that's taken against that employee is forwarded and seen through all the appeals that they are afforded as well. So that is one of the tools that we do have in our toolbox as city attorneys.
Marion Marks.
Can you hear me? Okay. I know that one reason this forum was called was because of all of the local news and allegations regarding public officials involved in things that were questioned. When issues are in the news, when allegations are made, I know those are, quote, ongoing investigations, if they do exist. It sure would be nice to have someone step up on occasion and make a press conference or something to clarify about some of the allegations that are made. There have been allegations about a number of public officials, but we never hear anything but the negative side of the allegation. We never hear anything about what comes of it. Could someone comment on that?
We'll go up the ladder.
Hello again. In reference to ongoing investigations, probably the largest tool you have as a citizen is what's called a FOIA request or a public records request. And so we get those all the time in our office. Now, the one thing to remember is that, and Mr. Broussard said it earlier, is that these folks are innocent until proven guilty. And so we try to make sure that we provide the documents that are necessary to you as citizens that are not protected by what we call 44.3, Louisiana Revised Statute 44.3, which are the exceptions to public records requests. Part of that is ongoing investigations or ongoing criminal prosecution, because we have to balance both the respect to that individual who is alleged to have committed a crime versus the public knowledge and the public record. We choose not to, as an administration, comment on any personnel matters because, again, we are conducting the investigation, we are determining the outcome or the action that should be taken, and until that is complete and all the facts are gathered, we find it unfair to both the citizen as well as to the employee to provide information that we know not to be complete. We want to make sure that our investigation is complete. Although we do get media inquiries often regarding situations that are ongoing, we do have an obligation to make sure to uphold the law, and part of that is held in our Louisiana Revised Statutes as well.
Here again, we deal with frustrations, Marion, and I know that it's frustrating because it's frustrating to us because we have to get the phone calls and the questions. Let's take an example, for instance, and this is a closed case, and we don't want to talk about too many cases, but say a parish commissioner has done something wrong, and they end up, we investigating that. In the course of that, we start getting phone calls. Are you investigating something? Well, we don't want to say, yes, we are, because then that person that's at the other end of the phone might put that on some little old blog site that they confirm they are investigating, and immediately that public official begins to have a black eye because he's being investigated. And that never goes away. So we try to investigate things because a person's not guilty until they're guilty. And we try not to, I'm not going to personally, nor are my people going to answer something just because somebody calls and asks about it. I don't think that's what our country's about, so that they can be slandered and libeled in the media or on the internet. So we investigate things. If we come to a conclusion that results in an arrest, certainly we will have a news conference directed and with the prosecutors, whether it be federal or whether it be state. But if somebody calls my office or does a Freedom of Information request on my office about an active case that's going on, or about a public official just because they want to get some trash that they can put out, which is often the case, we're not going to get in that business. I'm sworn, as are every deputy sheriff you see out here, sworn to uphold the Constitution and laws of Louisiana and the Constitution and laws of the United States. And nowhere in there does it include slandering somebody or putting information out that's going to jeopardize your case or get in the way of your case or hamper your case. And if that's the case, if that's what you want, then you got the wrong sheriff here, because that's not the oath that I took. And I promise you, there may be a lot of corruption going on, but it ain't at 505 Travis on the 7th floor. And so we're out there doing our job. I've got a whole list of cases and arrests we've made, just this corruption unit. And I'm very proud of the work that they've done. And we've got a way that we do it, and we're going to continue doing it that way. And it doesn't include putting all our business on the street, because we'd be successful about this many times. Better watch what kind of hand signals they're using here.
I think on behalf of the DA's office, the first concern is if you have a question, call and ask. We're responsive. The second is that the primary report should be from the law enforcement agency. Once it's to our office, we're not going to comment other than to give a general nature once a charge has been brought about the status of the proceedings. We're not going to comment about a pending criminal case other than to tell the court tell the public what it is and what the status is. The goal is, if charges are brought to seek a conviction, commenting on the press in the press can jeopardize either the witnesses or the victims in the case. And the goal is to get the conviction and not celebrate beforehand. There are 5 sections in Caddo District Court. There are thousands of cases brought each year. In those 5 sections of court, one of them is a drug section, which leaves us with 4 regular sections to handle all of the crime in Caddo Parish. Of those sections, they have 1 week for jury trial per month. So you've got 12 possible trials in each of those sections. And you're talking about maybe 100 trials in front of a jury that can happen a year. And you have thousands and thousands of cases and limited resources. And you have, not to be graphic, but I spent most of today dealing with 2 separate fathers whose cases I have investigations on who were accused of raping their daughters. And we have more of those than we can shake a stick at. And so there are resource allocation decisions. And the investigative agencies do their best with all of these thousands of cases, and they trust us to get them across the goal line. And our office does a really good job of that, and these investigative agencies do their best to present these cases. And we all work well together. I have, in one of those cases, was communicating with a federal prosecutor in Alaska today to get him, the father, brought here so that we can bring him to justice for what he did. I have a pending case now where I'm working with both the Sheriff's Office, the City Police, and the federal agencies to try to determine who can best get the ball across the goal line. And all of those agencies have set the egos aside. Not one of them is rushing to the press to try to get credit. They want to make sure that the individuals are brought and appropriately sanctioned for their behavior. And it's a great example. And when that case is concluded, all of those agencies will get with the press and tell you what happened and tell you the story about how it was all done together. But whether it's public corruption or any other crime, you have the resources available. If you have questions, you can call the Shreveport Police Department, you can call the Caddo Sheriff's Office, you can call the Vivian Police Department, you can call the U.S. Attorney's Office, and you can call the Caddo DA's office, and somebody will respond. Thank you.
Again, I get to go last and basically echo. Our policy is that we're not going to comment on anything ongoing, and for the same reasons that everyone else has talked about. We don't want to be slandering people that are just allegations that are being looked into. We don't want to be, maybe there's a covert operation going on, or there's something, the investigation is in a sensitive stage, and if you say something to the public at that stage, it could just completely frazzle the investigation, and then it's all gone completely. So in our office, you're not going to get any kind of public information until you get an indictment, and then all you're going to get is, this is what's in the indictment. And then if the individual pleads guilty, you'll get some more information. If there's any motions, any evidence that's put on, that's public record, that's in the press, then we're allowed to give that information. But until trial and all the evidence is put out there, that's all we're allowed to do. And I mean, I think if you were in that position, you would appreciate that as well. I know there's a lot of talk goes around in the communities, and I have to be very careful because people think that by virtue of where I am and what I do, I'm privy to information. So I have to be, I'm just talking to my friends. I've read something in the paper, they've read something in the paper, I say, oh, I saw that too, and they assume I know something. I'm like, no, I read that in the paper. That's all I know too. So it's very hard, and I have to be careful just talking to my friends, much less coming out in public and presenting any kind of counter information or any information about allegations that are out there. It doesn't mean that somebody in law enforcement isn't taking those seriously or aren't looking into them. It just means we can't comment on it.
Mr. Royals.
My name is Will Royals. This is directed to you, Sheriff Prater, and I guess anybody else can chime in, particularly the DA's office, if necessary. We met about a year ago. You happened to be in my office for something else, and I quizzed you about the Seepers case. In that, and even tonight, I've heard a lot from up in the front that there's a lot of, I guess, debate about what is corruption. It reminds me when Bill Clinton was arguing about the definition of what the word is, and it's not that complicated in my opinion. But in that conversation, you blamed specifically, and you seem to blame tonight, the DA's office. Back then, that was before Judge Stewart was in the DA's office, but even tonight, you alluded to that as in the Seepers case, the legislative auditor did investigate and twice gave letters publicly with a lot of detail, scathing detail, in fact, in the second one. And you said to me that you wore the pavement out between your office and the district attorney's office. And that you tended to agree and that there was a problem, but it was out of your hands. And so I followed up because I'm like a lot of people here. We're very overtaxed and very underrepresented here. And I asked you, how are you being effective in making sure that that corruption case gets prosecuted? And you didn't really have an answer. I wonder if you have an answer tonight. I also wonder if you still do blame, in fact, the DA's office for not, in this current DA's office, for not pursuing that case. And in the case of the school board, corruption that has been alleged by a whistleblower, why there has been no investigation or no contact for that whistleblower from your office or any other office up here.
Mr. Broyles, you said the definition of corruption is not that difficult in your opinion. We don't deal with your opinion, we deal with the law. And so if we had your opinion, we might could prosecute them. When I was talking to you and you're saying blaming the DA's office, when I say it's the responsibility or it's up to, then that's a little bit more of a neutral word, because it is up to the district attorney's office if they choose to take an investigation from the legislative auditor's office straight to them. And so that would be a question more appropriately directed at them, not me. So rather than mischaracterize what I said, I would appreciate the fact that you direct the question in the proper place.
Why are you not being more effective in making sure that what the legislative auditor has reported gets prosecuted? Because even though, as you're washing your hands of this responsibility, you are the sheriff and you have power, the district attorney's office also has that power and can do something about it. You say you work well together, but you did give me that indication that you did not seem to get much traction over there with any public corruption cases. And in fact, when you were campaigning, you alluded to that as well.
Do you realize that the Attorney General's office would be the one that would be over that crime and over the legislative auditors to make sure that that case was prosecuted? It's not the office of the sheriff. Then it was already past me, you understand? It was already to who I would take it to. So I'm going to a case that's already at the DA's office. If I'm mad that it's not being prosecuted, you're suggesting that I take it somewhere else?
It sounded like you just invited the Attorney General in to take over. I don't know if that's what you were indicating, but no, I'm asking you as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer here in this parish, over the city, and as one of the most powerful people in this town, I'm asking you, why have you not been more effective in helping make sure that we, the taxpayers, get people that have taken our money prosecuted and get our money back?
Well, I'm sorry that you don't feel like that the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office has been effective. I personally feel like they have. I'm very proud of the work that they've done. We cannot right all wrongs. That is not the responsibility of the Sheriff's Office. We work as hard as we can with the limited resources we have. But if that's not good enough for you, I'm sorry that it's not. We'll try as hard as we can do. That's all I can do.
So there's nothing more you can do to be more effective in making sure that this case, as well as the school board case, which you just recently investigated, a school board employee at Woodlawn and had them arrested. There's nothing you can do to be more effective in prosecuting these things, or even investigating them in the case of the Caddo Parish School Board.
What would have we investigating a theft that was reported by the school board? We investigated it as soon as we got it. We made an arrest as soon as we could get the facts together and present it to the DA's office, who approved it, the judge signed it, and we made the arrest. What else are we supposed to do?
I'd say for people that are losing tax money, I would hope that you'd be more effective in getting our tax money back to us when it's stolen and prosecuting those that steal from us.
Would you like to address that?
Thank you for the question. I guess first, and I apologize, I'm a little hard of hearing. I'm not sure I understood the first case you're mentioning. If it's a pending case, it's a pending case in district court.
It was the Caddo Parish Commission Seepers case that the Louisiana Legislative Auditor, I believe, twice turned into the district attorney's office, and probably, I think the second time may have been after the election or somewhere close to that.
I can tell you this, I don't know the status of that referral. I don't know whether it's a pending case or not. But I can tell you that the DA's office answers the phone and that somebody will be assigned to respond if a call is made. If it's a pending investigation, then it will be deferred until a decision is made. As somebody has mentioned, there's an attorney general. If the DA's office, for whatever reason, for example, if my child was a victim of a crime, this office probably wouldn't prosecute it. We might bring in the Attorney General. If there's an appearance of impropriety issue, the Attorney General's office for the state of Louisiana can be brought in. If there's an appearance of impropriety, the district attorney can call the U.S. attorney and ask for assistance there. We all work together, and it's not a problem of the agencies not working together and the agencies not investigating and prosecuting the crimes. What the sheriff has said is true. They work very hard at what they do, and there is a never-ending flow of new cases. One of the two cases I mentioned today, the Caddo Sheriff's deputy was investigating a charge from 30 years ago, and it is hard to describe in words how much work it takes for a sheriff's deputy to develop a case from 30 years ago. And they're busy doing that kind of stuff. But what's allowing the question to remain is the did you call? Did you get the name of the person you spoke to? And then you have it's just like customer service. If you have a complaint, find out who you're talking to, make the complaint, and follow it up the road. And if we don't get an answer, we go elsewhere.
I didn't think that we needed to call when our Louisiana legislative auditor sent a letter on our behalf as taxpayers. And so
yeah, I apologize.
Are you asking, would you be willing to invite the Attorney General in to help solve this matter? Because there does seem to be a lot of local pressure against prosecuting these elected officials.
I'm not commenting on that because I don't know who in my office or who in the DA's office was consulted or what the status of the case is. So what I'm saying is that you can call the DA's office and find out.
Are you familiar with the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's report?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. But that doesn't mean that if it's been given to the DA's office, that there's not somebody in the office that has it. And if it was reported, then somebody, I'm sure somewhere, has a file, and there's a flow chart of what happened to it. And what I am saying is if you call the DA's office as a citizen, you'll get a response by somebody who can answer you. They're not going to send it to me because I don't have the case, but they will send it to whoever it is.
Well, the taxpayers still don't have our money back, so we would like that, and we would hope that you would invite the Attorney General in.
I can tell you that whatever the case is, whether it be this one or any one, you can call the Caddo DA's office and get an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Royals.
Jason Middlebrook. A couple of follow-ups from Mr. Broyles is, first of all, very discouraged that I think the thing I've heard most frequently from our panel this evening is how difficult everything is and how little we should expect to be done because of how everything has to be just right in order to prosecute and the letter of the law. And I hope you can appreciate, I think that's 2 times more frustrating for us than it is for you guys. And I hope you can. And I know you say it's frustrating for you, but it's much more frustrating on this end. I promise you it is. My second follow-up is I hear how well all these departments work together. But once these charges are made, once I call and I call the sheriff's department and I make an allegation, how much do I have to follow up? How much do y'all talk? Once the sheriff's department turned it over to the DA and the DA's decided, I'm not going to do anything, but hey, it's an active investigation, so I'm not going to tell you about it. I can't tell you about it because you might put it on a blog and ruin somebody's life or whatever. Well, we're just trying to get in. You're telling the guy to call and get answers 15 minutes after you told him you're not going to tell him anything. That absolutely makes no sense to me.
And I apologize, I'm certainly not trying to misdirect or mislead, and I understand the frustration of not getting an answer. But what I was trying to do was say, so for example, if you were talking about any of the cases that are on my desk, and I have a bunch, then I could give you a status update on those cases. What I'm suggesting is that there's an individual that can answer that question, and it's just not me. And that if, for example, you asked me about one of my cases, I would be able to tell you May 25th is our next hearing date, and you'll get an answer then. Or, I can't tell you anything now, but here's my cell phone number, and I will give my cell phone number and my email address to anyone that wants it tonight. Before you leave, I'll give you a card, and you'll have 24/7 access to me. There's somebody that can answer the question. And it may be we have to wait until we reach a resolution, but we'll give you an answer and a person that can respond. And that is, I think, the best we can do if it's a pending case. It may be, I don't know the status, and that's what I'm saying, is that somebody somewhere can answer the question. It may have already been referred to the Attorney General or to the FBI, I don't know.
May I interrupt for one moment?
Absolutely.
I think one of the points of this, and maybe you can answer this, is if citizens don't feel like that they've got the answers that they want from the district attorney's office or the sheriff's office, can they call the state attorney general and say, we feel like that things have been overlooked?
Yes.
And would that help solve this issue?
Yes, certainly. Any citizen can call and complain. For example, if you can call the Shreveport Police Department and the FBI if the crime is in this locale, because those are both responding jurisdictions, and there can be simultaneous investigations. And you don't have to sit tight with an answer that you're not satisfied with. If you don't get a satisfactory answer from the DA's office, you can call the FBI, report it as a federal offense, and they can launch their own investigation, and it will be prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Given that the nature of the forum was how well everybody works together and how all these different task forces are interrelated and interdepartmental, it just seems that you're putting a lot of onus on us to make multiple contacts out there. And if everybody's flowing together and everybody's working together like we're being told, then if a decision is made at the district attorney level not to proceed with the investigation that the sheriff's department has done, does the FBI ever look at it? Does the attorney general ever look at it? Or does it just, okay, the DA's done with it and we're done talking about it?
I think it's a case-by-case basis. To give you an example, I had a case when I was a state prosecutor the first time. He was a very bad individual. He kept killing people, and every time I tried to bring him to trial, the witnesses would disappear, and it happened again and again. And so ultimately, the best way to get that person off the street was to make a call to the U.S. Attorney's Office and ask that they take the evidence I had and bring that person to justice for possession of a bullet. And that person got a 10-year federal sentence, and we got him off the street because we weren't able to effectively this way. Now, it doesn't mean that if there's a case that you go directly to the FBI with, to start there. If somebody robs a bank, simultaneous cases start up right away because it's an armed robbery in state court and it's a bank robbery in federal court. And with public corruption, it can do the same thing. It can start in both jurisdictions at the same time, and they both can proceed simultaneously. And the answer is that I'm not trying to give you the runaround. I'm trying to provide you with ways to get answers. And telling you that the DA's office is responsive.
It's my understanding that the Attorney General cannot come into to here to look at a case that's in the local domain of the district attorney unless they're invited in. Is that the case? Is that true?
I don't know.
Really? You don't know if that's the case?
I don't know if that's the case. I know that specifically the DA can recuse himself and then bring in the Attorney General, but I don't know that it takes that for the Attorney General to come in. Okay. But it's certainly something that you can get an answer by somebody who knows.
Sure.
You can call the DA's office and we can give you an answer, a definitive answer.
Excuse me, Mr. Broyles, we have some other people here who might want to ask questions. Would you please sit down, sir?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Recently convicted in St. Tammany Parish, former St. Tammany District Attorney Walter Reed and his son Stephen. Sentencing is in September. Obviously, the DA was the one accused of public corruption. This is not Caddo, this is St. Tammany, where my wife used to live. So I think that's a very important question he asked. And if y'all could get back maybe to Mr. Broussard with the answer, he can inform us whether the State Attorney General, Jeff Landry, can get involved in the Seepers case. I'd like an answer for that. I don't know, I'm not an attorney. I hope he can come in on his own, but if the law says he has to be invited, I would encourage you to ask Judge Stewart to invite him in. Thank you.
I guess I need to go back to, I have no idea about the status of that file in our office. I don't know whether there's not somebody already handling it. I will relay these communications to my boss, and when anyone wants to call, an answer will be made available.
You know, I hear a lot of frustration in the room, and let me just tell you a real quick story, okay? My house flooded in June of last year. Not enough houses flooded in June to where I was able to get any federal help because not enough houses had flooded. If I had waited a few months, I could have had some federal help. Okay, that's frustration. It's frustration when you can't even drive down North Market because they're giving away food stamps to people that weren't even affected by the flood here not long ago. Okay, that's frustration. It's frustration when I finally find out they have a loan that's available to me because of my flooded house, and I apply for it, and I get notified that I pay my bills and I have good credit, so I don't qualify. Now that's frustration. So I'm as frustrated as anybody in this room, I would imagine, with government. There's many things that occur that we just can't tell you. That doesn't mean we're hiding them from you because we were doing brother-in-law deals. Some of these people at that table I don't really like, and I'm not going to lunch with them, okay? And I imagine some of them don't care for me, but we damn sure aren't covering for each other, and I can promise you that. And I'm like a bulldog. If I get a hold of something and I'm not happy, I'm going to do everything I could. And I'm going to let you inside on something that you don't have any right to know. But I have met with the past DA and I've met with this DA about the case about the commissioners and the pension and all that business. And I've asked both of them if there's anything that the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office can do to help get this case prosecuted if it's against the law. I met with both DAs, one's deceased and one's current. And I called the meetings and I offered for my people, and I was assured that it's going to be taken somewhere else and that nothing needed to be done. Well, I told you that information. That's a call that James Stewart made. And James Stewart's a good DA. And I have confidence that he's working to figure out where it's going to be done or prosecuted. But see, I don't want to have to run and tell that publicly to everybody. That's not the way we do business. I just made sure it was done, and that's the end of the story. So I understand your frustration. But let's face it, guys and girls, you can't know everything that we do. And it's just the way it is. We would not be, I'm sorry that we're not as successful as we are, Mr. Bro. I wish we batted 100%. Damn, I stay up at night. I was in my office looking at the General Motors purchase, and I see we got some commissioners here. I spent 1 week solid, and my wife wondered if I even lived at the house. You can ask my corruption guys. I looked at that myself. I have enough paperwork, personally, deeds that I've gone over and contracts that would be as tall as that chair, as tall as that table. That's the kind, but you didn't know anything about that before tonight, did you? And I didn't brag about it, and I didn't go before the commission meeting, and I didn't call a news conference. I'm doing my damn job. And that's all I can do, and I get passionate about it. I'm not angry. I apologize for my language. I've always, for 42 years, I've worked in a pretty rough profession. And occasionally I slip out with a cuss word. But I apologize for that. But I can tell you one thing, again I say, I'm as frustrated, I would think, I don't know what your frustration level is. I'm as frustrated with government as anybody in this room. But there's not anything in government that I hear about or that I see that is any possible crime or anything we can do anything about that I hadn't looked into, I'm not getting somebody to look into, or I'm making sure that at least it's off of my desk and somewhere else.
Good evening, Miss Janie.
Good evening. Great to have y'all here.
This is Jamie Linscomb.
Yes, I seem to always have a question. Oops, I put my glasses back on, I can't see the question. And this is to the DA's office, and it's not a complaint. I've been a victim of white-collar crime, and the person who bought my business has been, and thank you. And I've had other friends in business who've had that experience. And occasionally, if it goes on between Caddo and Bossier, the victim is having to deal with two jurisdictions. And in my experience and in many other experiences, sometimes in a status conference, the person who committed the crime will plea bargain or whatever, and we, the victim, know nothing about it. We sometimes even have a hard time finding out when there's going to be pre-trial hearings. And I went the other day with John Carreri, who had a similar problem. He was never talked to. He didn't have an opportunity to testify. And the crime that happened with him was pretty significant. And I sometimes think maybe, we won't even talk about the Department of Corrections because that's a whole catastrophe of its own. But victims, we've had a business person in Shreveport who had so much stolen from them that they committed suicide. These are not victimless crimes. And I wish there were a process within this that the victim could. I called about status conferences all the time. I dogged it all the time. Y'all know how I am about these things. Caddo and Bossier, finally Judge Bolden told me to leave him alone. Outrageously, he said that. But the victim should be able to be aware of when there's going to be a conference and hopefully at some point have the opportunity to testify. That's just a passing thought. I had trouble finding out when there would be status conferences. That was at an earlier time, but...
Is that directed to the district attorney's office?
That's correct. But, I'm happy for anybody's input. And I just thought I'd share that.
And I appreciate the comment. First, you're right, victims have a right to be notified, and they should be. You have a right to be heard at sentencing, and you should be. In reference to the dual jurisdictions, that's just the problem of living on a river. And I can tell you that we communicate. Immediately after I was brought on board, I was given a homicide that geographically I thought was ours. It occurred on this side of the river, but it turns out that it's in Bossier. And it had sat and was nearing what we call prescription, which meant that the guy was going to go free because it hadn't been prosecuted in a timely fashion. We got with the Bossier DA's office, and that person was just tried and convicted. The DA's office has started, Judge Stewart has started processes to make communication better. Now, when I send out, and any assistant DA sends out a subpoena in a case, it has my email or that ADA's email address on it. We are all giving out our email and our cell phone numbers so that you can reach us when you need to. Judge Stewart has, for the first time in this jurisdiction, extended victims' rights to juvenile court. Prior to him becoming DA, victims in juvenile court had no right being given in effect. We alerted the judges there that we showed up with a victim. The judge began to balk, and we said, no, it's a statutory right. Just because you've never done it doesn't mean we're not entitled to it. And I assure you that in the future, if you call, we'll get you a person that will respond. Each section in Caddo District Court has an individual whose job it is to take care of the victims in that section.
Can I ask, is a docket ever printed on the internet?
You know, I'm not sure is the answer. I'm not sure. That's something that we can look at, and I will certainly communicate that to my boss. But I can tell you that we have a network, and that if you call and sign up for it, you should be notified of the court date in advance. And so then what I would suggest you do is ask for the prosecutor, because somebody is assigned to your file, and that person will be held accountable.
I want to add something to that question and to the DA's office too. How many of y'all have, all of you probably, and probably a big question, but how many of you have ridden going north on Uri Drive and right about where you turn off to go to Magnet High School? You see a huge sign that says, if you have a question about spousal support, what's some of the other things that's on that sign? Child abuse. There's like 4 items listed on that huge billboard. And our new DA put that billboard up, and it's got specific phone numbers under it. I was shocked the first time I saw that. I almost stopped and said, wow, what a new day, a new era. Look at what's going on here. We're actually advertising numbers for citizens to call with certain crimes that people feel like have been committed. So I thought that was rather remarkable that they did that. I would hope that everybody, if you haven't seen that sign, or if you want numbers, that you would call the DA's office to get those concerning issues that you might feel like need to be investigated. Mr. Marks.
I was asked to ask a question. Is there a statute of limitations specific to each of the acts of alleged public corruption?
Oh, good question.
By definition, each crime in Louisiana in state court has a statute of limitations. Some are smaller than others, misdemeanors. And I apologize, I don't recall them right off the top of my head. I pull them up and I get the statute and I look. Hard felonies that are punishable by life or death never prescribe. So a murder or a really serious rape never prescribes. Harder felonies that are not punishable by life have a 6-year statute, smaller felonies a 4-year statute, and then misdemeanors even shorter. Public corruption itself is probably not the title. The statute would probably say malfeasance. What we have presented would be a series of facts, and then we would try to find the charge that meets it. Malfeasance in office is a typical charge in a corruption case. Is one example. There's others, obstruction of justice, and each of them have a different sentences, and the sentence controls what the statute of limitations is. And I apologize if that sounds kind of lawyeristic, but unfortunately that's the job. And I apologize if my answers have been vague. I promise that if any of you haven't had your questions answered, you can get my number tonight and you'll get an answer.
This is Brian Langford. He's also one of your, on the board of directors for the Broadmoor Neighborhood Association.
I don't really do much, but thank you, Rob. This is for Sheriff Prater and Mr. Owen. This doesn't have anything to do with public corruption. There is a sex offender that lives about 1,000 feet from this gym and from the playground on the other side of this wall. He's a Tier 2 sex offender. He was charged in Bossier with three counts of aggravated incest. All 3 of the victims were under the age of 13. He did 10 years, hard labor. I understand that sex offenders have rights and whatnot. I've reached out to the Attorney General's office to try to get a better understanding as to whether or not he fell through a loophole and whether or not he has a right to live that close to that playground, whether that playground falls within the meaning of playground under the statute. How would I go about getting the Attorney General to give us an interpretation of that law to determine whether or not he can actually live there?
Lieutenant Wingate.
No, sir, I have not.
Lieutenant Wingate at the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office handles all of our sex offender registration, works and gets opinions, and he does an excellent job of trying to keep up with the almost 600 sex offenders.
Right.
We have a whole unit that checks them, but he's the one that does all the administrative work. I'd suggest that in the morning you call him,
Greg Wingate.
Lieutenant Greg Wingate,
Okay.
and he's at CCC, and if you have a problem, I'll give you my phone number afterwards, and you can call me and I'll get y'all in touch, or you can just write out your name and a concern and I'll get him to call you in the morning.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Just a real quick question, maybe you can respond by raising your hands. How many of you are aware that there is a case pending in court right now about, I think it's some of the CEPRS issues? Are y'all aware of that? How many of y'all are aware of that? Okay. Just wanted to ask that question. Yes, ma'am.
Rebecca Brown. I'm short. So who among y'all is in charge of looking at what the Caddo Parish School Board does? And my second part of that question is, are you aware of the chatter on Facebook, which I know y'all both love and hate, about the allegations that the whistleblower that Will alluded to is making? A lot of them are kind of policy things within the Caddo Parish School Board, I think. But there's also some allegations of, Title I funds, of starting nonprofits and then using the money for different reasons, which I know is something that happened a lot in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. So I'm just wondering if y'all are aware of it, if it's on the radar. I mean, I know you can't say if you're investigating, but have you seen it?
Thank you, Rebecca. That's a great question. Anybody want to answer that? I don't know if they watch online. Do y'all watch on the Facebook? There is a gentleman called Bill Unsharpened that posts that has made some very serious allegations about a whole bunch of people.
Well, now employees of the Caddo Parish School Board are now sending him additional information. And a lot of it is, kind of griping about policies and stuff like that. But there's some serious allegations.
And what is the Facebook thing?
Well, he keeps getting taken down. It was Bill LeBay or something, but people keep.
Again,
I wasn't asking you.
No, I'm just saying that.
Up here, but I wanted to know really more importantly, is it the sheriff's office or is it the FBI who's supposed to be looking at what the Caddo Parish School Board is doing? Because obviously it wouldn't get to you until someone's investigating.
Has that individual called the Shreveport Police Department and reported?
I believe that, no comment.
Because when you call the Shreveport Police Department,
So it's the Shreveport Police Department that should be called.
the Shreveport Police Department will give you a report. And that's the first step, or the Caddo Sheriff's Office. And you report the crime, and then an investigation started, and it goes from there.
Captain, can you interact with her after the meeting or talk to her now?
If you will see me after the meeting, I'll find out what it is, and I will either take care of it in our department or I will get it to the sheriff's department, and we will make sure that it's addressed one way or another.
That's a really good question, Ms. Kraft. Thank you.
About?
One of the things she's referring to there is some of the allegations deal with Title I funding, which is federal funding, and I'm not sure, maybe one of y'all could meet with her too. I know, and I would recommend this, that you talk to Mr. Boyles, because he did an interview with the person making the allegations, and I believe that he should give y'all the name of the person that is making these allegations so that an investigation can start. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Renee Spatero.
I'm sorry, speak up.
Renee Spatero. And I know Mr. Owen and the sheriff have heard a lot about CPERS, and they are aware of how we feel about that generally. But I also know that we have a couple of commissioners here that might could address that issue for us too, because I think the main issue that we all have is the return of that money, several $100,000. That's what we want back, and I thought maybe our commissioners could address that.
I appreciate that question. I think that's in the court right now, is it not? Is that in a court? That's before a judge as we speak, so I don't know who can comment on that. If it's before a judge, maybe one of y'all can answer that. Mr. Bradford, you want to? Would you like to address that? This is Matthew Lynn. He is
are y'all comfortable with me taking time from y'all?
Excuse me. That's Matthew Lynn. He's one of our commissioners for this area. And I think very quickly, because we have about 5 minutes.
Okay. No. Okay, I was going to speak this way because they're the ones asking the questions instead of you guys.
You can come up here and get this mic if you'd like.
Okay. Hello, my name is Matthew Lynn. I'm the president of the Caddo Parish Commission. I took office in 2008. In the year 2002, the Caddo Parish Commission, with authority and told to do so, or that it was legal by the parish attorney at that time, took part in an alternative to Social Security. And so instead of paying into Social Security, you had an option of paying into another retirement program. This went into action in 2002. In 2008, I took office and I was given the option of either participating in Social Security or participating in the retirement program that the parish offered. I accepted that particular position within that retirement program. 2 years ago, the parish sued itself to get a ruling on this because we had a lot of parish commissioners that had retired. Probably, I think there's about 13 that had retired, quit, were no longer parish commissioners. A lot of them had received money out of CPERS. And they were already gone and no longer in office. A couple of them were also deceased, and they had received this money and had already cashed it out. And so it needed to go to a court of law, which is where it is right now, in order to decide, because that money, if the judge decides to recuperate it, is going to need to recuperate it from the heirs of many people, as well as people that are no longer commissioners. And that is the ruling that we are waiting on right now, and I hope that it comes forward soon. Thank you.
And that's what I was referring to when I said that there is a case pending in court right now, and nothing that I say or anybody in this room says can make a difference in what that judge is going to rule. Once that judge rules, then we can move forward on that issue. And personally, if the judge says it was against the law, and I want everybody to hear this, I think they ought to go to jail, you know. So anyway, that's my personal opinion, but here's Mike Middleton, one of our commissioners.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity. Caddo Parish Commission District 8, this area down here. Part of my main part of my platform was to get away from CPERS. I did not participate. It was not offered to me, which made me mad because I wanted to have the opportunity to decline it. So anyhow, I'm not involved in the CPERS. The health insurance, they did not offer that to us. Again, I wanted to be able to decline it. They did not offer it to us. And the way it is right now, if somebody wants to participate in health insurance, they have to pay 100% of their premiums or whatever it is. And they're not supposed to get a parish match. So anyhow, my parish, also my salary, some of y'all have heard it, a lot more of you here tonight. My salary is supposed to be somewhere around $1,800 a month. I'm only taking $700 a month until this lawsuit is completely taken care of. The rest of it goes into escrow. And they're holding the whole $1,850 worth of taxes and stuff out of my $700. So I showed Rob, I had one check was $0, and my average check right now is $211, something like that. So anyhow, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm just going to have to wait until the judge decides. I can't make any decision. I can't tell anyone else to give the money back. That's not within my realm of responsibility or within the law. So just, you're going to have to sit back and wait for the judge to decide that. And then I'm also, as far as my commitment on salary, I'm also waiting until the appeals takes care of it. So anyhow, I'm working for less than $700 a month, and I'm glad to do it. I'm trying to do everything I can to help y'all out.
Thank you, Mike. And by the way, I've seen that paycheck that he showed that
I've got a picture of it on my phone.
there was kind of zeros there. Let me say something else about the issue with compensation for commissioners, and then we're going to get back on track because we're going to end this. Would be the last question from Ms. Kraft. We also have, is Billy Wayne still here? Billy Wayne? Okay, he's not here. Okay, the Cattle Commission has a charter review committee that is meeting as we speak. We will meet on the 18th of this month. I am on that committee. One of the topics that we will be discussing is compensation and benefits. I have personally asked the attorneys to define those both constitutionally and by statute. What are the definitions and what is a benefit and what falls under the rules of compensation? And that is something that will be addressed. If you want to have any input or make a statement to that committee, you can contact me. My information is all over Facebook, especially in the Broadmoor Neighborhood Association. If you want to make a comment that you want heard in that committee. That's called representative democracy. So please feel free to call me if you have a comment on anything in the Home Rule Charter that you want to address. Yes, ma'am. Last question.
Okay, my question is really kind of about this lawsuit, which was filed in 2015, and this is a softball question for the litigators up there. So the lawsuit was filed last year, right? And the district court made a ruling, which the plaintiffs did not invite. So they appealed it to the appellate court, which I believe it is still at the appellate court level, waiting for that ruling before it comes back. And we're at the very beginning. We haven't started discovering nothing. Very, very beginning. So just give us a guesstimate of how long it is going to take this litigation, because we all know the wheels of justice are very, very slow. And my other question for the county commissioners would be, since the legislative auditor has already said that it was wrong, clearly, why not just give the money back? Why are you litigating it? I mean, this is just a serious, I love you, Matthew Lynn, but why? Why litigate it? Why not just give the money back? And it's not just you, but as the commission, why not just give it back? But I want to hear from the litigators, how long do you think this case is going to take?
Okay.
6 years, 7 years, exactly?
Thank you, Ms. Kraft. This is going to be excuse me, Matthew, 1 minute.
Okay. I have no access to this money. I cannot write a check for this money. This money is not given to me. I don't have it. And so I don't have it to give it back. Thank you.
Not what the legislative auditor said.
What? Excuse me.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appellate litigation can take, I've waited 2 or 3 years for appellate decisions. But having said that, I don't know in this particular case anything about the civil litigation. I can tell you as a prosecutor, civil litigation complicates matters. It affects witnesses, it provides transcripts that allow people to get cross-examined. And so generally, I'm averse to any of my witnesses being involved in civil litigation when I have a criminal case going forward. I do appreciate your listening.
Thank you. That's going to wrap up what we have to with our panel. There are a couple of announcements we need to make. I would like to personally thank all of you who have given up your time that are up to this panel. Thank you. They didn't have to come. Whenever we discussed this meeting, I can't tell you the number of people who said, ain't gonna happen. You're never gonna get 3 government levels of government at one table at one time talking about their responsibilities. Every one of the levels of government said, we would love to come and meet with your neighborhood. Thank you for giving us that opportunity. I thank y'all for educating us some here tonight. I really mean that. And by the way, Ms. Bushnell joined our neighborhood association today. She lives in our neighborhood, so there you go. Also, a couple of quick announcements. We have a movie in the park, May 20th.